Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Cole Country Podcast, where we talk about everything WVU sports. I'm your host today, Matt Howe. Joining me today is Tyler Cobb. Tyler, how are you doing?
Doing all right. Missing some people, but
yep, sadly,
we'll get her done.
Sadly, Max and Ian are not able to join us for tonight's episode, but they're here with us in spirit.
And the show must go on.
The show must go on.
Oh, my bad. I hit the table. So, first up, got some basketball talk. Both women's and men's basketball team won on, what did they play, Monday and Tuesday?
Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, so we'll start with the men because they played first. Big victory against Robert Morris. Final score 87-59. You were at this game. I was not, unfortunately. But the era of Darren DeVries has officially started, and it started in a good way.
Very, very good way. That was the hottest start I've seen in a basketball game in a long time. Granted, the Mountaineers had a pretty rough season last year with all the issues they had going on with coaching, and then, just the team seemed to struggle. But this year we were off to a really hot start, and that game was fantastic. In the first quarter, first 10 minutes, they outscored them like 10-1. It was crazy.
12-0 at one point. They hadn't scored yet.
Yeah, so.
And like we had alluded to in a previous episode, just the culture and just the feel around the team this year compared to last year is a lot better. It just seems like they're out there and they're wanting to be out there and they want to win. You had Tucker DeVries, the leading scorer, with 18, and Javon Small was the second highest scorer with 15. But the team stats is kind of what stands out. That we shot, with 55% from the field and 41% from three. That is something that was not there last year. Not good shooting, and Monday it was apparent. So. Good start for the basketball team.
Good performance all around. And you could tell, obviously you'll get a couple chances here in the coming months as the season picks up to go watch some of the games. These guys have a lot of fun out there playing ball. So it was pretty electric to watch, and I'm excited to see how we do the rest of the season.
I didn't even realize this. It was where'd it go? Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. 8 blocks. That's what I was looking at. 8 blocks to 1 block, which is interesting given that the main concern around the basketball team this season is height. So 8 blocks to 1 block is a pretty good start.
They have a lot of, and obviously, the average basketball player is a lot taller than the average civilian, but they had a lot of players who were in the 6'6", 6'8" range, I think.
He has made it apparent that they're going for a small ball type of team. So rebounding could be an issue, but if we play an electric offense, then hopefully that can make up for the rebound. We actually lost the rebounding battle that game, but it was close, 37-41. That's the concern moving forward. Hopefully it won't be too big of an issue. We play Friday again. Who do we play Friday?
That's an excellent question.
I don't know 100% who we play Friday, but I am looking forward to that one, to getting to watch that one as well.
Friday, November 8th is against UMass.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. Okay. So hopefully that'll be another good game. I think it will be.
Probably.
The next one that we were both at was the women's game against Townsend. An even bigger victory, 85-41, and a career high for Jordan Harrison. Very nice game.
23 points. I think she had 18 of those in the first half. You could just tell the whole game she was on top of it, calling plays out, moving people around. Obviously, we play very strong defensively with our women's team. That carried us to the Big 12 tournament last year, and also into the I can't remember where we were seated in the NCAA tournament. But we were seated relatively well. And obviously preseason, they have us ranked 16 in the country. And you could see a lot of that here. Over double the point differential. Just a really solid game all around. 43% field goal, 36% from the three-point line, The turnover margin was insane. 32 turnovers to 16. We grabbed that ball, you know. So really, really strong start from the women this season.
Yeah, and I mean, to be expected, right? I mean, they went far last year. You lost a couple people due to graduation, but JJ Quinterly, who you're kind of hanging your hat on, is still there this year. And I mean, the fact that she wasn't even the leading scorer yesterday, you had obviously Jordan Harrison be the leading scorer, but JJ Quinterly, she put up pretty decent numbers as well, 14 points, and then just overall as a team playing like at a high level, which you would expect out of a team that made it to competed with Iowa last year. Well, we won't get into officiating talks. That was last year, but hopefully, and I'm hopeful that Mark Kellogg can get this team going and make another playoff run.
Yeah, and a lot of talent brought in with the new class. Sydney Shaw is new this year. She was one of our starters. Played 27 minutes, and I don't know how to read basketball stats. 19 points. That's what I thought it was. I was trying to double-check myself. Looked very solid out there. Very strong defensive player. Yeah, solid. And the women are definitely going to go very far this season. So
I think both teams can, both the women's and the men's team.
We'll have to see. It's hard to gauge at this point in the season. Obviously, the women are ranked already. And we'll see how that goes as the seasons play out.
Hopefully, it'll be a good one for Mountaineer basketball in both women's and men's. But moving on, some game talk. I don't really know how to label this one. The 2026 matchup for football against East Carolina on the road was canceled. Well, not really canceled. We bought it out, and it was replaced with a 2-year contract against Virginia, 2026 and 2032. It will be played in North Carolina in the Bank of America Stadium, I believe, and it will be the Dukes Mayo Classic. I'm looking forward to that game. I think Virginia is a team that we don't play enough. They're close. So I don't really understand the whole, neutral site thing. I think it should be like a 2-year series, one at home, one away kind of thing. Because
I think that would
close.
be nice.
But West Virginia, the Carolinas, are known for having a large West Virginia alumni base, and we saw that in the Dukes Mayo Bowl. Basically, more West Virginia fans there than North Carolina, and it was a home game for them. So I'm sure it'll be pretty similar kind of split because it'll be early in the season. And I'm looking forward to it. I'll still be in school during that, so I'll get to go to that game. I don't know. You all might make.
I have no idea where I will be at that point in my life.
You're a little older than I am, so. But I'm excited for it. One thing I will say is that Wren was catching some fire for this one, and I think it is completely unwarranted. After I've thought about it a little bit more. People think that he is, the main reason you can't fire Neil Brown right now is, money related.
Yeah, the buyout for the contract.
Yeah, and I'm not saying Neil, even with given the money that we would have, say we did have enough, I'm not saying Wren would fire Neil, but the whole thing is, okay, financially we're not in the position to make a change like that. And so some people have said that, okay, then why are you going and buying out a series against East Carolina? And so I want to get your thoughts on that. My main thing is they did, but this game against Virginia is going to be more profitable. So, yes, you're losing money right now that you'll be gaining in the future from a better game.
Yeah, I mean, that's just an investment, and obviously I'm sure they looked at what the numbers would be. I'm reading here that they had to pay $300,000 to East Carolina to cancel the game, and I'm seeing here that the game against Virginia would be worth at minimum $2 million. Each neutral site game against Virginia would be worth $2 million.
Yeah.
So this is setting us up for that revenue stream in the future. So, I mean, if you just look at the money there, assuming that's correct, obviously, it looks like a really good move.
Ear Sports is a pretty reputable. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a good move. I'm excited to play them. I mean, I'm going to be more excited to watch a game against Virginia than I would be against East Carolina. And I think it's a game that's, we have the Alabama series that's probably going to get canceled or something done with it next. At least Neil Brown alluded to in one of his press conferences.
We will see.
But it's a Power 4 matchup, so you don't have that, hey, you're playing nobody, but it's also going to be competitive. So definitely something to look forward to, especially in all the sorrows of West Virginia football nowadays, which we will move on to. Might be a little bit of a shorter episode. That's what happens when we only have two of us here. But moving on to the bye week. I think we went 0-1. Obviously, we didn't play, but it was a rough one, and not because we didn't play, but because two teams, every team that beat us lost. So we can no longer hold that higher thing of, hey, yeah, we've lost 4 games, but those 4 games are undefeated with the exception of one game, and that was Kansas State versus BYU. Now they have Penn State versus Ohio State loss, which that one doesn't look bad. You've got the Pitt SMU loss now. That one, if they would have played it closer, it wouldn't have looked as bad, but they didn't even play SMU close. And then the two that looked the worst, Houston beat Kansas State at home, and Texas Tech beat Iowa State on the road. And so there's kind of 2 ways to look at this, and I want to get how your view, like how you look at it. The main 2 ways you can look at this is, hey, okay, that means that West Virginia is back in the Big 12 race. Obviously, we've only lost 2 conference games, so if you win out, you're 7-2 in conference, you can kind of compete again. Or the next way to look at this is Neil Brown had 2 opportunities in primetime television, nighttime, Morgantown, one of them being a Coal Rush, and came up not short, but came up completely empty-handed, like not even close to beating either of those teams. But Houston, who was one of the worst teams in the conference preseason and still up to this point hasn't done anything miraculous, was able to beat Kansas State, and Texas Tech was able to beat Iowa State on the road. So there's 2 ways to look at it. I'm kind of stuck in the middle. I don't even think we went out, so I don't think it matters. What are your thoughts?
This really only matters if we win out.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things. Obviously, what you're saying, I think is important in the sense that when you look at how we've done this season, we don't do well against teams where there's pressure. Pressure on the atmosphere. And like you were saying, night games with a lot of stuff riding on it in various ways, everything is handed to you in that sense. The atmosphere at home, obviously losing to Pitt on the road is a little bit different. But like you said, we just haven't looked good against teams, and we just can't seem to win games that we aren't supposed to based on the lines. So where does that put us? I don't think it bodes well for the rest of the season. In terms of winning out, it's possible, but we're in the section of the season where it's going to be a slugfest. We're not necessarily much better or much worse than teams, so it really depends on how you play the day of. And we are not a team that has been consistent with that.
There was one more that I didn't even allude to, and that was the fact that UCF blew out Arizona 56-12, whereas we barely struggled to even hang in the game with Arizona. So that was pretty much another one, because you've got UCF still on the schedule.
Where you look at the pacing of our Arizona game, where we got out ahead, and then just kind of coasted and let them catch back up.
Which is just the story of Neil Brown up to this point. Loves the fourth quarter comes back.
So if you could get a little bit farther ahead, maybe I'd feel comfortable with that. But it's highly likely that we would lose. I mean, I feel like we're 50-50 on each of these games. Some a little worse than that, realistically, just based on how these teams have done against the rest of our opponents. So I don't know that we're in a good spot to finish off the season.
I don't think we are. We've got Cincy, Baylor, UCF, and Tech remaining. That doesn't bode well for Neil. He struggles on the road, and he struggles against teams above 500. So you look at that Cincy and Texas Tech game. I'm not going to say my pick for the Cincy game because we'll obviously do the pick'ems later. But Cincy does not look good right now. And then Tech, who just beat Iowa State on the road, and Neil Brown notoriously has struggled against Texas Tech. I mean, every year up until last year, he lost, and it was not close. And so that game doesn't look good. And then you look at the Baylor and UCF games. UCF, yeah, they haven't been playing great,
But they scared Iowa State. They did relatively well against BYU.
And then you look at Baylor, they hung 59 points on Texas Tech. And then they just beat Oklahoma State and TCU. I mean, Baylor's on a 3-game winning streak. They got something going. So it doesn't look good for West Virginia to finish the season. And like you said, this bye week only matters if we win out. But that's the question. Does it matter at all? Because I don't see a scenario where we do.
The door is open for us.
It's cracked. I wouldn't call it open. Well, I would say it's cracked.
The door is not closed yet. We have a 3-2 conference record, and we would have to really fight. And again, it also depends on how the teams that are above us finish out the season. You know, having 1 or 2 losses is a decent, 1 loss or no loss in the case of BYU so far. That's a pretty good spot to be in. Even the teams that have 2 losses, do you expect them to go out and lose the rest of the season? Because that needs to be on the table for us to have a shot.
Yeah, most teams got, 4 games left, and Iowa State and so Kansas State would have to lose 1 more because they have the head-to-head over us. This would have to be in tandem with us winning out.
Right.
So in the event that we do, I'm not saying we will, you would have to have Kansas State lose 1 more. You would have to have Colorado or Iowa State lose 2 more, or BYU's lose 3. BYU is looked and consistently looked like the best team in the Big 12. I don't think they lose 3. So going off that, you would need Colorado or Iowa State to lose 2 more, and I just don't see that happening. If you look at both teams' remaining schedule, Iowa State has Kansas on the road this week, Cincy at home, Utah on the road, and Kansas State in the last week of the season. So
that's the game that'll decide which one of those, assuming those are the next 2 teams. The Kansas State-Iowa State game at the end of the season will decide who plays BYU,
so
assuming it goes how it goes.
Let's just say Iowa State wins that game at the end of the season against Kansas State. They would have to lose 2 of Kansas, Cincy, and Utah. I don't think they're beating Utah the way Utah's looked. So Kansas and Cincy?
It's on the table.
And then you look at Colorado. What's Colorado's remaining schedule? I don't have them up.
I have them here. They're playing Texas Tech this weekend, then Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's had a really off season. Kansas hasn't done super well. Texas Tech, they've had ups and downs in Utah. So
I'm looking at it, and I think in order for them to lose 2 more, I think it's got to be the Tech and the Kansas game.
It could happen. Kansas has consistently gone up to the line.
Kansas is
with
a
their
weird
games.
team, man.
They just haven't been able to finish it out.
Kansas is a weird team because they blew out Houston, blew them out of the water, but then Houston comes and beats Kansas State.
And they were really close with
yeah,
Kansas
and
State.
Kansas, which I was like, that's a trap game for Kansas State. So what's up with Kansas? Can they maybe pull some shenanigans off to help out WVU? The problem is our fate is not in our hands anymore. Neil Brown has once again given up the fate of what happens to our season in other people's hands. It's up to Kansas State, Colorado, Iowa State, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is.
That's the game. That's the position we put ourselves in.
Yep. So since we're doing, we're going through this thing a little bit fast, how about this little spontaneous section? We didn't talk about it before. How about we talk about the college football playoff rankings coming out this week?
Okay.
It was, in my opinion, not good. It's supposed to be the, quote unquote best teams. That's the AP poll.
All right, what do you want me to look at?
College football playoff top 25.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to be the quote-unquote best teams. So if you are at the end of the season, obviously you've got the 5 auto bids, which will most likely be SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12 champions, and then the highest ranked Group of 5 champion. And then you've got, the 7 auto bids, and it'll be the 7 next highest ranked. So it's the 7 next highest ranked are quote-unquote going to be the best teams. And so you've got Oregon number 1. I think we both agree on that.
I feel like it's fair.
Ohio State number 2 and Georgia number 3, I think should be swapped.
I agree with you. I think Georgia has looked like a super solid team, except in the first half of their game against Alabama.
Yeah. And Ohio State, outside of that Penn State and Oregon game, I guess you could argue Ohio State because Georgia's loss comes to Alabama, who has severely dropped, whereas Ohio State's only loss was by 1 point on the road to the number 1 current ranked team.
I will say, Ohio State's game against Penn State, they didn't look like superstars. I thought they played well, but they just couldn't seem to get away with it, and it felt it felt like they should have been able to pull away. There were just a lot of mistakes on both ends in that game.
That's always going to be a close game. What I look to is their defense in that game. They did not allow Penn State in the end zone one time. It was 2013. Penn State had 2 field goals and a pick 6. So Ohio State's defense is what kind of took them to the top in that game. Moving on, we've got Miami 4. I think they're way too. Obviously, we did our rankings, and I said that Miami is, should have been 3rd because it was. Who was undefeated at the time? Oregon, Penn State, Miami. In this scenario where you're looking at the quote-unquote best teams, Miami is way too high.
Yeah.
No chance they beat the teams below them. Texas, Penn State, Tennessee, Indiana are all teams I think beat Miami in head-to-head. So Miami, in my opinion, is a little too high. Texas, if you're taking Miami down, they're a little low.
I feel like Texas could be at least number 4.
Probably about that. The next team I want to talk about is Indiana. From there on out, you've got Penn State, Tennessee, and then Indiana at 8. I think Indiana is severely underrated.
Who do you think you could put them above?
So I would put them above any team that isn't named Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon.
You put them above Texas here?
I would put them above Texas. Well, okay, that one's a little questionable. You can maybe make the argument for Texas. So we'll say that Texas is still above them. But Penn State, Tennessee, in terms of, they played Nebraska and they blew Nebraska out of the water, and then Nebraska just competed with Ohio State, obviously. I don't see a world, and we'll obviously get to see this in the coming weeks, where Indiana plays Ohio State. But I think it is ridiculous that some people still think that Indiana won't compete with Ohio State.
Yeah, that just doesn't make sense if you look at who they've played and the record against those teams.
I understand that they haven't played the greatest of schedules. It is what it is. They don't make them, so you just have to play the teams you get. But what they have done is blown out essentially every team on the schedule.
Yeah, I definitely it's tough because, like we've said before, when we do, whatever context of ranking different teams, everyone on this list is good at the very least.
Yes.
And like you always say, you have to look at the head-to-head if it exists. If you go out and have a bad day, you could still be the best team. I think Alabama's kind of had an off season. They've only had 2 losses. So it's tough to make a ranking in this
Looking
way.
at Indiana's schedule, we'll throw away the FIU game. That's kind of a throwaway game, and then same thing with the Western Illinois. On the road at UCLA, 42-13. At home versus Charlotte, kind of another throwaway game, but 52-14. At home against Maryland, 42-28. On the road against Northwestern, 41-24. At home against Nebraska, 56-7. At home versus Washington, 31-17. And on the road against Michigan State, 47-10.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other word to describe their season so far other than dominant. And Now, do you have their schedule up for who they play the rest of the season?
It's Michigan, Ohio State, Purdue. I don't see a world where they come out of the season at least 11-1. I think they beat Michigan, Purdue, no problem. It is just that Ohio State game. Ohio State game. And it is in Ohio State, so that could be an issue, but that's the one that Indiana's season comes down to.
I agree, and honestly, even if they would go and lose that game, that doesn't take them out of contention for any of the important things, right?
Well, so I don't think it depends on how they lose that game. If they lose, I think they have a chance.
Sure.
So let's say they do lose it. Do they lose it closely, or is it kind of a blowout? Because if it does end up being a blowout, the College Football Playoff Committee is going to look at that and say, "Okay, it
Can't
was
compete with a good
they
team.
are 11-1, but they've played not good teams all the way, other than Ohio State, and they got smashed by Ohio State." I don't think that happens. So I think they play them close. If they beat them, obviously that'll that kind of ends the story. But
Yeah.
I just think Indiana's being a little disrespected. Put some respect on their name. And Kurt Signetti, I wish he was here. BYU, are they a little? I don't think they're a little low. I think they're all right.
I mean, that's a very good spot. If you look at every college football team in the country, you'd love to be top 10.
I agree. And I don't think there's any team above them I would say should rank higher than them in terms of who the better team is.
Yeah, it'd be hard to say at this point just because of who you play.
Yeah. Notre Dame, Alabama, and Boise State round out the 10, 11, and 12. I stand by Boise State as too low as well.
They are a very solid team. I haven't got to watch a lot of their games. I think I caught their last one, and they look awesome. Obviously we talk about Ashton Genty, but their quarterback, whose name escapes me, he looked really solid in their last game. Good, quick on his feet, got out of a lot of bad situations where they were coming around trying to get a sack, threw good balls. I mean, he was just on top of it.
Up to this point, he was, I don't know what the exact average was, but it was 150-some, 160-some. I mean, it was up there per game. And so these last two games against UNLV and San Diego State, both wins. He against UNLV, 33 carries for 128 yards, 3.9 average, and 1 touchdown. And San Diego State, 31 carries for 149 yards, 4.8, and 2 touchdowns. And I still see people saying that is a bad game. And it's just because he's carrying the ball a lot. If you are sitting there saying that 31 carries for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns is a bad game, then you're not watching the game. I watched both of these all the way through. Every single play that Boise State ran, the box was stacked. Okay, so you're running. If every run play, Ashton Genty has to basically go through 8 guys. There's no secondary that's kind of backing off. And the linebackers aren't back in coverage. They are all stacking the box. And mind you, UNLV has had one of the best run defenses up to this point. So I understand that the average is not there. You look at some of the other averages, 13.4, 11.5. He averaged 7.7 against Oregon, who's currently ranked number 1 in the country. And then obviously he drops off a little bit, but that's what's going to happen when they're stacking the box every daggone play. I stuttered there. Did you hear that? Daggone play. That's what's going to happen. So Ashton Genty, way too underrated. Not underrated. I think he's getting the respect he deserves. But to say that those 2 games in specifically, man, I can't even talk right now. I'm trying to talk too fast. Those 2 games in specific were bad games is kind of just ignorant, and you're not looking at the game as a whole.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they're rated too low. You competed, and if not for some special teams miscues, I think they would have won the game against Oregon. And so I think they're way too low. 12 is way too low. I'd have them above Alabama. I'd have them above Notre Dame. You can probably argue BYU, even though they're undefeated. I think they're too low.
I like it. Next up there is SMU. They looked fantastic against Pitt.
So right now, this would be the first out.
Mm.
I don't hate where SMU is. I think I like where SMU is.
No, they're definitely a good spot.
A&M, LSU. The rest of this honestly looks pretty all right. Well, Missouri is way too high.
They have Pittsburgh above Kansas State.
I disagree with that. We had this conversation when we were doing the rankings. Remember,
Yes,
guys, this is not ours. This is now a who is the best team or who is the better team. Excuse me. And yeah, Pittsburgh, I don't like above Kansas.
I think Pittsburgh is just too high.
Missouri needs to get out of there. I don't care if it's a ranking or rating or whatever.
Them onto the list.
The SEC, because it's got that logo on their jersey.
Yeah, that's something.
Little bit of a spontaneous segment. It's not a terrible ranking, but it's not great. There are some issues, and we'll obviously see this change in the coming weeks. We got some big games coming up. Alabama, LSU this week.
Yeah, this will move around a little bit.
For sure. Moving on to the Big 12 pick'ems, what everybody comes to see. Got a little bit of an interesting week as the season comes to a close here. 3 or 4 games left for all teams. It comes down to the wire, especially when you've got a close race. Iowa State at Kansas last week. Obviously, Texas Tech beat Iowa State at Iowa State, and then Kansas is coming off to a bye week. I'm going to pick the upset here. This is a little bit of a weird one.
I had a feeling you would.
So I'm actually going to pick. I'm going to pick 2 upsets here. Today, and this is one of them, and I'll tell you why. Iowa State just come off that interesting loss, to say the least. Obviously, it's by 1 loss by 1 point at home. A little bit of a tragic loss. You were undefeated up to that point. Kansas is coming off a bye week, and then previous to the bye week, played Kansas State close and dominated Houston. So Kansas, Jalen Daniels has been playing better. Kansas as a whole has been playing better. I think this is a little bit of a trap game for Iowa State, going on the road to play Kansas, who's looked better. Iowa State, obviously, the gut-wrenching loss last week. I think Kansas takes this one.
I agree with all of your points, but I disagree with the consensus. I think Iowa State just has a more solid, well-rounded team, and obviously they've played a lot better over the course of the whole season. So I got to stay with Iowa State here.
We'll switch them up. It feels weird not having all 4 picks.
Yeah, I need a jit pick. Yeah. I need big man to tell me what's what, man.
Yeah, we know you guys are watching. Just know we miss you on the show, okay? Next up, we've got Colorado going into Texas Tech. Now, we just talked about, obviously, Texas Tech had the big win.
This is a tough game.
Colorado had a bye week. This is my other upset. And it's technically an upset. Colorado's ranked, Texas Tech is not. And what this game does 2 things. I'm going to pick this game because I think Texas Tech is one of the most underrated teams. And I know going back to a couple episodes ago, I said that Texas Tech was one of the most overrated teams, and their record didn't say what they were. But playing Iowa State like that, this game is in Lubbock. It's a tough place to play. I'm going to give it to the Red Raiders.
This is a tough game. I think I'm going to have to agree with you here. They just had the upset of the season. And I don't know. I mean, they've done relatively well the whole year. It's a home game for them. Not to say that there's, Colorado is obviously a really decent team this year, really good team. I think it'll be a tough game, but I think they could pull out the win.
So we got 1 and 2 on the first one, and then unanimous on the second one. I would just like to say this is kind of a bit of a random point, but we saw a lot of new uniforms over, course of the summer. Texas Tech, I love their uniforms. I don't know what it is about them, but there were a bunch of misses in the offseason when people announced new uniforms. I think ours and Texas Tech were two of the big hits. I love these things. What do you think about them? I'll put a picture up on the screen.
I like their callers.
You like that's it? You don't like anything
Well, I
else?
mean, I don't know. Not a big fashion guy, maybe.
Little bit of a random point.
They do look good.
I like them. Next up, UCF at Arizona State. Another interesting game. I will add, I was the only one to get the Arizona State versus Oklahoma State pick right last week. Everybody picked against me. You should listen more often.
I am a casual.
Obviously, Arizona State played Oklahoma State last week on the road and came out with a victory 42-21. And then UCF dominated Arizona at home 56-12. Bit of an interesting game. I'm going to stick on the Scatterboo train, man. I like Arizona State. I remember when we were watching, what was that game we were watching over at your place? I mean, we are currently at your place, but there was another game that we were watching.
We've watched a couple games over here.
And Arizona State, I was like, I love their uniforms. The shimmery helmets. I don't remember what it was, but since that day.
It may have been the Kansas game.
I think it was. Since that day, I have been on the Scatterboo train. No, it was Utah. That's what it was. It was the Utah game.
No, you're right. Cam descending.
That's crazy. Ian, since you're off this week, you need to make us you need to get a job list. I think he'll find a little humor.
America, for those watching, please let us know in the comment who needs to get a job. We need
Cam descending is definitely one of them. I mean, 8th year of eligibility, it's getting a little ridiculous at this point, buddy. You could have had 2 degrees. I mean, what are we doing? I'm going Arizona State. I'm gonna stop rambling.
I like that pick. UCF is a team to beat for them, though. I think I'm gonna run with the Sun Devils here.
Back-to-back unanimous picks.
You make good points.
What the? Cam Scatterboo is going to run wild.
That's all you need to say.
Exactly. Oklahoma State at TCU. Oklahoma State having one of the worst years, if not the worst year.
If I may take the lead on this one.
Go for it, big man.
I tried to give them a break last week. I said they're going to go in, have Arizona State come to them, and they're gonna turn the season around. And obviously, it's too late for them to really look towards even bowl contention at this point, right? What's their record?
Oklahoma State. I think it's out of contention.
I think they're past. I think they're past the chance.
I don't know what their exact record is, but I'm pretty sure
their conference record is 0-6.
3-6. They'd have to win out.
Yeah, that's not happening probably. But
they won their first 3 and they haven't won since.
I think I said this last week. I think it would be really funny if they lost the whole rest of the season and had a 0-win conference record. I do think they lose here. I thought they'd turn it around. I thought they'd pull out and have a good game. They haven't done it yet. I mean, obviously, go back a couple weeks. They did relatively well against BYU. Was that them having a good game? I think yes. I think that was also BYU not having their best game. I watched the majority of that game, and BYU just didn't look as good as they have. I don't think they pull out a win here.
I think I'm with you. I do think Mike Gundy will find a way to win one of them. Okay, whatever one that is.
Is this the one to win?
That's what I'm looking at. I see Tech at home and Colorado in the future. I don't think he wins either of those. Little spoiler.
It's a tough schedule.
I don't think Mike Gundy goes 0-9 in conference play, and I don't think he beats Tech or Colorado, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt like you did last week, and I'm going to go Oklahoma State. So this is my plus I've gone with the home team for each pick so far. Got to get an away team in there.
Now, do you think Mike Gundy is going to be on the you need to get a job list?
No. He's been one of the most consistent coaches, not only in Big 12 but in college football in general.
Well, this season he's consistently losing.
Well, okay, but you can't just look at one bad season.
I don't know.
You have to consider.
That's not my job. I don't look at the coaches and say
Mike
who stays and
Gundy has
goes.
been at Oklahoma State since 2005. He has had, excuse me again, one losing season.
Not anymore.
So this will be the second. I'm assuming they don't find a way to go 6-6. So I don't think he's on the hot seat by any means. I mean, look at this. He's in a bowl every year since
You've convinced me.
since 2005. He's not on the hot seat. I think he finds a way to get one of these wins. I don't think they'll make a bowl, but I'm hopeful for Oklahoma State, man. I feel for them right now. West Virginia's in a bad spot, but they might be in a worse spot. So you had TCU, I had Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
The Holy War in Utah. Shout out to Dan Remy. I'm sorry, but I'm not picking Utah. BYU's going to win this game. Now, I will add that this could be close. Okay, 2007 happened. I think we all remember West Virginia should have beaten Pitt, and they didn't. They are rivalries for a reason, and anything can happen in football. So
I go back to that K-State-Kansas game where you said it was a trap game.
this could be one.
Rivalries are tough.
They are, like I said, they're rivalries for a reason, and so I am going to pick Utah. I'm sorry, BYU. Sorry, Dan, again. I was thinking about Dan. That's why I said Utah.
I was thinking about Dan.
I was going to say, I'm sorry, Dan. I am going to pick BYU. But don't be surprised if this is a little bit of a trap game for BYU.
I'm exactly there with you. I think BYU has just shown that they are the team this year, and I don't see them losing it. But it's at Utah, right? So
Shaking the camera. I hope y'all aren't wobbling.
shaking the camera. All right. Yeah,
Um,
I think Utah can show out, but I think BYU will have it.
It'll be an interesting game. First time this game has been a conference game in a long time, if ever. I'm not 100% sure if it has or not.
We looked at it before, and I don't remember.
We will, obviously they're not here with us, but we will get Big Man's and Jit's pick and flash them up on the screen for y'all just so you know what they pick as well. And we keep forgetting to do this, but we haven't gotten our overall record. It's getting close to the end of the season.
We'll get around to them. We'll do a
I know
grand
I'm
review.
in the lead.
No, there's no way.
I know I'm in the lead.
You get like one right a week.
No, that's not true. I was the only one that had a winning record last week. I went like 3-2 or something like that.
Whatever.
And it's because I picked Arizona State.
Yeah.
Whatever. We'll get the record. We'll get Big Man and Jit pick. We'll flash them up on the screen for y'all. But the game of the week, well, not really.
Our game of the week.
Our game of the week. Are we looking forward to it? We don't know. West Virginia goes into Cincinnati to play the Bearcats. I'm nervous. This could be... It's not looking good right now, I'll tell you that. Man, I don't even know who to go on this. ESPN matchup predictor sure says it's not looking good.
It's
They've got it,
ESPN.
what, 63.4 to 36% chance for West Virginia. So it's not looking good. I do know that there are 3 players confirmed out. Aubrey Burks, Aiden Garnes, and Jaden Bray will not be in. And Garrett Green was doubtful, which I'm assuming means that he will not play. So we do get another week of Nico Ball. That could make the difference. But their quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, has kind of been playing out of his mind. 2,100 yards, 65% completion percentage, 15 touchdowns to 4 interceptions on the year. I'd say that's pretty daggone good.
I think the odds are stacked against us here.
Neil Brown does better when his back is against the wall. It's like
Depends on who he's
he
playing.
gets on the hot seat and then finds a way to get off the hot seat. So it could go either way. The main thing I'm looking at is, can Nico have another game like he had against Arizona? And another thing that plays into us is this is close to home and we're coming off a bye week. So that's good for us. But is Cincy coming off a bye week too? Yeah, Cincy's coming off a bye week too. So both teams coming off a bye week. I don't know, man. I will say I don't feel great about it. That's for sure.
I stand by what I said earlier. We're in the slugfest of the season.
The slugfest. Well, because everybody thought that was going to be November. No, October. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Well, we got slugged around last month, but now, you know what I mean. Everybody's, I feel like we're in the caliber of opponents where it could go either way every single week, and you're gonna have to really fight to get that win.
Both teams averaging about 29 a game. It could go either way, man. This is the first game we'll get to see with Jeff Koons as the defensive coordinator. So I think that could make a difference. Obviously, we're probably going to get Nico Ball again. That's going to make a difference. Jaheim White and CJ should both be healthy going back into this game. So that is going to make a difference. I think it comes down to, can West Virginia secondary, it seems like we talk about it every week, and that's because we do talk about it every week, find a way to stop Brendan Sorsby, who up to this point has played very, very well. Do you want to take your pick first, or you want me to go first?
That's a really tough matchup for the Mountaineers, but I like the Mountaineers. I think it's, like you said, it's a tough game, but our backs are against the wall. The guys definitely want to win it. Not, I'm sure Neil Brown wants to win. But, when you look at the guys that go out and play, I think they're really going to fight for this one. So I'm going to give it to the Mountaineers here.
I want to add, this is two players on here that I want to talk about. One of them, his name is Jared Bartlett. We should be familiar with him. He spent 4 years in Morgantown. And he just transferred last year with a graduate transfer, and he is their second leading tackler. Up to last week, he was their leading tackler. But he's their second leading tackler with 42 tackles on the year. And then their interception leader, Josh Minkins, was committed to West Virginia out of the transfer portal and then decommitted to commit to Cincinnati. So two players that have history with West Virginia. Could be a little bit of a interesting dynamic for those two players. I have been negative up to this point. Did I pick? I don't even remember if I picked West Virginia against Arizona. I think I picked Arizona.
I think I was the only one.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll get a fact check on that.
Yeah, we'll fact check it. I think I picked Arizona, so I've been a little negative. I'm gonna go positive this week. We dominated Cincinnati last year. There's a lot of similar players and familiar players that we played last year. This was a bit of a coming out party for Jaheim White last year. I know I'm saying a lot of last year. I think we get a win on the road. The new Big 12 rivalry, so to speak, even if it's not really. I'm going to go with West Virginia. So both of us going with West Virginia.
I like that pick.
Big Man and Jit will get theirs again and flash it up on the screen. With that being said, I think that is all we have for today. You got anything else you want to talk about?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
We have only been going for about 50 minutes, so a little bit of a shorter episode. That's what you're going to have when you don't have two other people here to talk to. We miss you, Big Man and Max, but we hope everybody enjoyed this week's episode of the Coal Country Podcast. Make sure to tune in next week. Follow us on our socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Coal Country Podcast for most of them. Yeah, we'll put it in the description. We hope y'all have a great week. Thank you. Goodbye, America.